In the wilds of late 18th century America, the line between civilization and chaos was razor thin. Families pushed west, chasing opportunity, but found danger and hardship at every turn. Out of this harsh landscape emerged the Harpe brothers, Wiley and Micajah, whose names would become synonymous with terror on the frontier. Long before serial killer was a term, the Harpe's violence horrified settlers and exposed the limits of early American justice. Wiley Harpe's story is not just one of crime, but a chilling reflection of the brutal realities that shaped the nation's earliest days. Before Wiley Harpe became a lone outlaw, a figure etched in the annals of American crime, his story was intertwined with that of his brother Micajah. Together, they formed a terrifying duo, their names synonymous with brutality and lawlessness. Their actions would leave an indelible stain on the frontier, a dark mark that time could never fully erase. He and his brother Micajah unleashed a reign of terror starting in 1797. This wasn't a fleeting moment of transgression but a sustained period of violence that gripped the settlements in fear. Imagine the dread that settled upon communities as word spread of their heinous acts, the sense of vulnerability that permeated every home and farm. Their crimes weren't about profit, it wasn't about material gain or the accumulation of wealth. They weren't driven by the typical motives of robbery or theft. They seemed driven by a desire to inflict suffering, a chilling and inexplicable thirst for violence that defied reason. It was as if they reveled in the pain and anguish of others, finding some perverse satisfaction in the terror they inspired. Leaving settlers from North Carolina to Kentucky in fear, the vast expanse of the frontier, once a symbol of opportunity and freedom, became a landscape of dread, where every shadow held the potential for unimaginable horror. Families lived in constant apprehension, their lives overshadowed by the Harpe's brutal legacy. The Harpes preyed on travelers and isolated families, targeting those most vulnerable and defenseless. They exploited the isolation of the frontier, turning the promise of a new life into a nightmare of unimaginable proportions, their violence unpredictable and senseless. There was no logic to their brutality, no pattern to their victims. This randomness only amplified the fear they instilled, making everyone a potential target. Their names became whispered warnings, cautionary tales shared around campfires and in hushed tones within the safety of cabins, symbols of the dangers lurking beyond the safety of a log cabin. They represented the untamed wilderness, the darkness that threatened to engulf the fragile settlements and shatter the dreams of those who sought a better life on the frontier. As America's first documented serial killers, they were more than just criminals. They challenged the very idea of a civilizing frontier. They exposed the vulnerability of the settlements and the limitations of law and order in the face of such depravity. When Micajah was killed by a posse in 1799, it seemed like a chapter of terror might finally be closing. Wiley's story didn't end. It entered a new, more desperate chapter. The death of his brother didn't bring him to justice, but rather propelled him further down a path of violence and depravity. The legacy of fear he inherited would shape his every move, fueling his actions and solidifying his place as one of the most notorious figures in American history. The shadow of the Harpes continued to loom large, a constant reminder of the darkness that could lurk within the human heart. Micajah's death in 1799 marked a significant turning point, not just for the Harpe brothers' reign of terror, but for Wiley himself. The dynamic had irrevocably shifted. The partnership, built on shared bloodlust and a twisted sense of loyalty, was shattered. Micajah's demise forced Wiley Harpe into a new role, alone, hunted, and desperate. The safety net of his brother's presence, the shared responsibility for their heinous acts, was gone. Now, the full weight of their crimes rested squarely on Wiley's shoulders. Every shadow held a potential threat, every rustle of leaves could signal the approach of the law or vengeful citizens. Wiley vanished into the wilderness, seeking refuge in the dense, unforgiving forest that blanketed the frontier. He knew these lands offered the best chance of survival, a place where he could disappear from the eyes of the law, at least for a while. Shedding his old identity to survive, he discarded anything that might tie him to his past. Clothes, possessions, even his mannerisms had to change. He was no longer one half of the infamous Harpe duo, but a ghost, a shadow moving through the undergrowth. He drifted through Kentucky, a land he once terrorized, now a place of constant fear and vigilance. Every settlement, every farmstead held the potential for danger. And Tennessee, another territory scarred by the Harpes' brutality. He couldn't stay in one place for long, always moving, always looking over his shoulder. Always on the run, he became a master of evasion, reading the land, anticipating threats, and leaving no trace behind. The hunter had become the hunted, and his survival depended on his ability to outwit those who sought his capture. Adapting to life as a solitary fugitive, Wiley learned to rely on his instincts and resourcefulness. He built hidden camps, foraged for food, and became intimately familiar with the rhythms of the wilderness. No longer just a follower, blindly obeying Micajah's commands, Wiley became a resourceful outlaw, making his own decisions, forging his own path, however dark it may be. He was forced to think for himself, to strategize, and to take responsibility for his actions. Evading capture for years, he became a legend in his own right, a phantom figure whispered about in taverns and around campfires. The stories of his escapes and near misses only added to his notoriety. His focus shifted from wanton violence to survival, from senseless killing to calculated acts necessary to stay alive. The thrill of the kill was replaced by the grim determination to avoid becoming the killed. Seeking out new criminal alliances, Wiley understood that he couldn't survive alone forever. He needed information, resources, and protection. The frontier's criminal underworld, a shadowy network of thieves, murderers, and opportunists, river pirates preying on unsuspecting travelers along the waterways, and highwaymen ambushing stagecoaches and lone riders on the dusty trails, offered him a place to belong, a twisted sense of community among those who lived outside the law. He found a new family, bound not by blood, but by shared desperation, and a willingness to do whatever it took to survive. Wiley's journey after his brother's death was a descent further into darkness, revealed a man shaped by brutality, hardened by loss, and driven by a primal instinct to survive at any cost. Now forging his own path in the shadows, a path paved with violence, betrayal, and the constant threat of capture. This transformation set him on a collision course with another infamous outlaw, Samuel Mason, a ruthless leader whose gang controlled a vast network of criminal activity along the Ohio River. Their meeting would be a clash of titans, a battle for dominance in the brutal world of the frontier underworld. Wiley Harpe found refuge with Samuel Mason, a former war officer turned river pirate. Mason's gang targeted travelers for profit, a stark contrast to the Harpe's senseless violence. For Wiley, joining Mason's crew was a chance to hide in plain sight and put his violent skills to use. But his reputation for cruelty unsettled the gang. Mason's world was about calculated risk, not chaos. Wiley's brutality made him a liability, not an asset. Tension simmered, and trust eroded. Even among outlaws, Wiley's violent nature set him apart. The uneasy alliance was doomed to fracture, setting the stage for betrayal. Greed shattered the fragile alliance by the early 1800s. A hefty bounty was placed on Samuel Mason's head. Wiley Harpe saw an opportunity to kill Mason, claim the reward, and perhaps buy his own freedom. With James May, he plotted to betray their leader. In 1803, they killed Mason, severed his head, and set out to collect the bounty. Wiley hoped this act would erase his past, but it was a desperate gamble. The journey with Mason's head was a final, cold-blooded calculation. Instead of redemption, it would lead Wiley straight into the hands of justice. Wiley Harpe and James May arrived in Greenville, Mississippi Territory, presenting Mason's head and claiming the reward. Wiley, using the alias John Setton, nearly fooled the authorities. But fate intervened. A traveler recognized Wiley as the notorious Harpe. Their ruse collapsed. The captors became captives. The authorities, shocked, arrested them on the spot. The act meant to secure their freedom sealed their fate. Wiley's capture marked a turning point. The frontier was no longer a lawless refuge. The wilds that once hid outlaws were shrinking fast. Wiley Harpe's trial in early 1804 was a milestone for American justice. In a formal courtroom, his crimes were laid bare, no longer judged by a posse, but by a jury and the rule of law. Witnesses confirmed his identity and recounted his brutal past. The evidence was overwhelming, the verdict inevitable. Wiley was sentenced to hang, his fate sealed by the very system he'd long evaded. The trial symbolized the triumph of law over frontier chaos. It sent a message. Even the most feared outlaws could be brought to justice. The era of unchecked violence was ending. Wiley Harpe's execution in February 1804 was a public spectacle, a warning to all who might follow his path. Crowds gathered in Greenville to witness the end of a legend. After the hanging, his head was displayed on a stake along the Natchez Trace, a gruesome landmark known as Harpe's Head. This act turned Wiley from man to myth, his story woven into Southern folklore. The display was a chilling reminder of the price of lawlessness. With Wiley's death, the most violent chapter of the early frontier closed. The community reclaimed its sense of order and security. Wiley's fate became a lasting symbol of justice's reach. Wiley Harpe's story, though gruesome and unsettling, is an indelible dark thread woven into the rich and complex tapestry of America. It's a tale that challenges our romanticized notions of the past, forcing us to confront the shadows that lurked beneath the surface of westward expansion and the forging of a new nation. It serves as a stark reminder that the frontier, often portrayed as a land of boundless opportunity and heroic pioneers, was also a place as fraught with peril and moral ambiguity as it was promising. The untamed wilderness offered both freedom and lawlessness, attracting individuals seeking a new life alongside those seeking to exploit the absence of established order. Wiley Harpe, along with his brother Micajah, transcended the label of mere criminals. They became chilling archetypes of the ruthless outlaw, embodying the darkest aspects of human nature unleashed in a lawless environment. Their names became synonymous with terror, their deeds whispered in hushed tones around campfires and in frontier settlements. The sheer brutality and senselessness of their violence left an indelible scar on the nation's collective memory, a haunting reminder of the fragility of civilization and the ever-present potential for darkness to erupt. Their actions challenged the very foundations of the nascent legal system and forced communities to grapple with the realities of frontier justice. Their legacy is a complex and contradictory one, representing both a triumph of law and order in the face of unimaginable depravity, and a cautionary tale about the inherent darkness that can fester at civilization's edge, a constant reminder that the line between order and chaos is often thinner than we might believe. It highlights the struggle to establish moral boundaries in a world where traditional societal constraints were often absent. Wiley's eventual capture, trial, and execution marked a significant turning point in the development of American justice, signaling a commitment to upholding the rule of law even in the most remote and challenging environments. It demonstrated the growing power of the legal system to hold individuals accountable for their actions, regardless of their notoriety or the circumstances of their crimes. Yet, despite the passage of time and the countless other stories that have shaped the American narrative, our morbid fascination with Wiley Harpe's story endures, a testament to the enduring power of dark legends and the human tendency to be captivated by the macabre. It forces us to confront the uncomfortable truth about the worst aspects of human nature, the capacity for unimaginable cruelty, and the depths to which individuals can sink when driven by greed, rage, or a complete disregard for human life. It compels us to examine the darker corners of our own history and acknowledge the presence of evil within the human heart. The chilling legend of Harpe's Head, a gruesome reminder of his barbarity, continues to linger in the collective consciousness, a dark stain on the landscape of American folklore. It serves as a haunting whisper of the brutal and often unforgiving road that America traveled on its journey to becoming a nation, a path paved with both progress and profound suffering. It reminds us that the pursuit of manifest destiny came at a significant cost, both in terms of human lives and the moral compromises that were often made. Wiley Harpe's tale is far more than just a chronicle of crime and punishment. It's a stark and unflinching reflection of a nation's ongoing struggle to define itself, to reconcile its ideals with its realities, and to grapple with the enduring legacy of violence and injustice that continues to shape its identity. It's a story that demands we remember the past, not to glorify it, but to learn from its mistakes and strive for a more just and equitable future.